This is A Course in Miracles, Manual for Teachers, Part 22. How are healing and atonement related? Healing and atonement are not related. They are identical. There is no order of difficulty in miracles because there is no degrees in atonement. It is the one complete concept possible in this world because it is the source of a wholly unified perception. Partial atonement is a meaningless idea, just as special areas of hell in heaven are inconceivable. Accept atonement and you are healed. Atonement is the word of God. Accept his word and what remains to make sickness possible. Accept his word and every miracle has been accomplished. To forgive is to heal. The teacher of God has taken accepting the atonement for himself as his only function. What is there then he cannot heal? What miracle can be withheld from him? The progress of the teacher of God may be slow or rapid, depending on whether he recognizes the atonement's inclusiveness, or for a time excludes some problem areas from it. In some cases, there is a sudden and complete awareness of the perfect applicability of the lesson of the atonement to all situations, but this is comparatively rare. The teacher of God may have accepted the function God has given him long before he has learned all that his acceptance holds out to him. It is only the end that is certain. Anywhere along the way, the necessary realization of inclusiveness may reach him. If the way seems long, let him be content. He has decided on the direction he wants to take. What more was asked of him? And having done what was required, would God withhold the rest? That forgiveness is healing needs to be understood if the teacher of God is to make progress. The idea that a body can be sick is a central concept in the ego's thought system. This thought gives the body autonomy, separates it from the mind, and keeps the idea of attack inviolate. If the body could be sick, atonement would be impossible. A body that can order a mind to do as it sees fit could merely take the place of God and prove salvation is impossible. What then is left to heal? The body has become Lord of the mind. How could the mind be returned to the Holy Spirit unless the body is killed? And who would want salvation at such a price? Certainly sickness does not appear to be a decision, nor would anyone actually believe he wants to be sick. Perhaps he can accept the idea in theory, but it is rarely, if ever, consistently applied to all specific forms of sickness, both in the individual's perception of himself and of all others as well. Nor is it at this level that the teacher of God calls forth the miracle of healing. He overlooks the mind and body, seeing only the face of Christ shining in front of him, correcting all mistakes and healing all perception. Healing is the result of the recognition by God's teacher of who it is that is in need of healing. This recognition has no special reference. It is true of all things that God created. In it are all illusions healed. When a teacher of God fails to heal, it is because he has forgotten who he is. Another sickness thus becomes his own. In allowing this to happen, he has identified with another's ego and has thus confused him with a body. In doing so, he has refused to accept the atonement for himself and can hardly offer it to his brother in Christ's name. He will, in fact, be unable to recognize his brother at all, for his Father did not create bodies, and so he is seeing in his brother only the unreal. Mistakes do not correct mistakes, and distorted perception does not heal. Step back now, teacher of God. You have been wrong. Lead not the way, for you have lost it. Turn quickly to your teacher and let yourself be healed. The offer of atonement is universal. It is equally applicable to all individuals in all circumstances, and in it is the power to heal all individuals of all forms of sickness. Not to believe this is to be unfair to God and thus unfaithful to him. A sick person perceives himself as separate from God. Would you see him as separate from you? It is your task to heal the sense of separation that has made him sick. It is your function to recognize for him that what he believes about himself is not the truth. It is your forgiveness that must show him this. Healing is very simple. Atonement is received and offered. Having been received, it must be accepted. It is in the receiving, then, that healing lies. All else must follow from the single purpose. Who can limit the power of God himself? Who then can say which one can be healed of what, and what must remain beyond God's power to forgive? This is insanity indeed. It is not up to God's teachers to set limits upon him, because it is not up to them to judge his Son, and to judge his Son is to limit his Father. Both are equally meaningless, and this will not be understood until God's teacher recognizes that they are the same mistake. Herein does he receive atonement, for he withdraws his judgment from the Son of God, accepting him as God created him. No longer does he stand apart from God, determining where healing should be given and where it should be withheld. Now can he say with God, "This is my beloved Son, created perfect and forever so." 22. How are healing and atonement related? They are not related, they are identical. This is so powerful. And yeah, I think atonement is in the clarification for terms, because it was a term that I was really confused about. I had grown up reading and hearing the word atonement, but I never really knew what it meant at all. And so, yeah, when we get to the clarification of terms, then it's going to be a little more clear. But this starts to talk about it in that there's no degrees of atonement. Atonement is basically the full accepting of God. And it is the one complete concept possible in this world because it is the source of a wholly unified perception. Wholly unified, meaning in your mind you've fully accepted that you are one, that we are all one, that everything, the whole, is one with God. And that's it. And there's no space in your mind for anything else. And it had this line about partial atonement is a meaningless idea, just as special areas of hell and heaven are inconceivable. So atonement is it. You break it down, it's at one mint. So it's being completely at one, not like, oh, let me have 70% of my mind be whole, and then this 30% I'll hold on to being as separate or individual. It's fully at one, completely whole, unified. Yeah, it's pretty huge. And moving on, I highlighted here, to forgive is to heal. And forgiveness, wow, is so powerful. And this word to forgive, it is forgiving. It is that in giving love, in giving grace, in giving blessings, we give to receive. We give to know that we have it. And healing is when we can give up our perception of separateness, and to be able to fully accept wholeness. The teacher of God has taken accepting the atonement for himself as his only function. So real healing is when the person offering or giving the healing, the teacher of God, can fully accept atonement for himself. And a lot of people, healers, get stuck thinking or perceiving separately, perceiving that a person is different from them. And true healing happens when we can fully accept it for ourselves as one. And I'll continue that forgiving is healing needs to be understood if the teacher of God is to make progress. The idea that a body can be sick is a central concept in the ego's thought system. This thought gives the body autonomy, separates it from the mind, and keeps the idea of attack inviolate. And basically, perceiving sickness means that you're not fully with God. And real healing is when you can perceive another person or being or self, all being kind of the same, as fully healed already. And I believe that that's how Jesus lived and walked the earth, is that he perceived correctly. He didn't perform miracles of people getting well because he was seeing their sickness. He was able to have these miracles spontaneously happen because he saw them as they really were, not for their sickness. And it is the path of a healer or a teacher of God. And I'm continuing to be on that path. And I remember there was one of the theta healing courses that I took, and I believe it was, diseases and disorders, where part of the course, you look at all sorts of different diseases. And in the process of looking at it, it's like you have to be able to see beyond the body sickness. You have to see the Son of God for what he is, which is whole and complete. And it's not easy because in this world, we're very much trained to see bodies as sick and bodies as separate from the mind. And personally, I had a point where there are a lot of people in the medical field in my family, being a Filipino family, it's not atypical. And I followed a lot in my sister's footsteps in that she was like a model of like excellence, and she always achieved very well and did really well in school. And so then I naturally emulated that. And she was going in a path of being pre-med, and she always had a very clear goal for herself since the age of 13 that she was going to be a doctor. And she is. And for me, I was even offered a scholarship when I was graduating high school to do a program which would get me on track to get an MD and PhD. And I turned it down because some part of me knew that that wasn't what I really wanted, that the path was very clearly paved for me because I was able to emulate my sister and perform really well on tests and do well in school in general. Sciences and math and things like that came very easily. But to me, on a deeper level, I knew that there was something that was not in alignment if I were to pursue that path and to follow Western medicine. And only when I started to really deeply learn about healing did I understand that the model of Western medicine isn't about anything with a connection of the mind, and how powerful it is, how much power we have in our own health and wellness and healing, and that we do see it very separately, that very much a clinical model of health is very different from this teaching. And I made a choice. I made many choices because I had many opportunities to pursue a path of medicine, of Western medicine. And time again, it just, when it came down to it, I knew that I couldn't do it because I wouldn't believe fundamentally in what a lot of the teachings were about. And I'm so grateful that I have learned what real healing is about and what real wellness and what real health is really about. And it's so much deeper than what we can learn from any textbook experience. That is, unless there are new textbooks that, and I think there probably will be. Intuitively, there's probably going to be a lot more information and texts that make the bridges between what's physically happening and with the mind, and our ability to connect spiritually with what is happening to us physically. I believe that is going to be growing more and more. Certainly, sickness does not appear to be a decision, nor would anyone actually believe he wants to be sick. He overlooks the mind and body, seeing only the face of Christ shining in front of him, correcting all mistakes and healing all perception. Yes, healing. It really takes work. After doing many healing sessions, and from the beginning where I would perceive the person in front of me not as the face of Christ, not as the Son of God, getting from there to, over time and with practice, starting to see, oh, this is how you really heal, which is you see this person in front of you as perfect as he is, already healed. And this also applies not just to people that are coming to you for healing sessions, but every single person in your daily life. Every interaction is an opportunity for healing. Every interaction with every other person is an opportunity to see them as the Son of God or not. We have that option, and it takes a lot of training, real mind training, not time, but focus, to be able to perceive in that way. When a teacher of God fails to heal, it is because he has forgotten who he is. Another sickness thus becomes his own. And it's really easy for people to fall into the trap of thinking that they are a healer and thinking that they're sort of above another person because they're a healer, and other people are not. And when you get lost in perceiving the illness, then you also get stuck in it. And it's actually a common thing that is something that I learned through Theta Healing and also doing a lot of different kinds of healing work, is that a very common sort of older healing technique, or a lot of shamanic work that I've learned through different traditions, is that the healer would take the sickness or the illness or whatever disease that another person may have and take it on themselves, and then they heal it. And so that thus heals it from the other person, but then they're left with it. And I learned that that's sort of an outdated model, that it worked and works to a certain degree. And a lot of people, a lot of healers that have the calling to be a teacher of God or to be a healer in this lifetime, they have that same pattern where they take things on. And in the everyday vernacular that I've been hearing recently, people use the word empath. I'm an empath. And the association that comes with being an empath is that you take on other people's emotions. When I hear it, I hear that way of being, I don't believe that empathy is the right word for it. And I don't think that that's actually a healthy way of being, because that is kind of like this, the way that a lot of shamans would work, is they take on the suffering, the pain, the disease, the illnesses, they take it on from other people and put it on themselves. That is not necessary. You can be sensitive to other people's feelings. You can be aware of what people are experiencing, but you never have to take it on yourself. And if you take it on, then you get stuck. And so the way to not take that on is perceiving differently. You perceive your brother as healthy. You perceive your brother as the Son of God. When we judge other people for whatever illnesses or sicknesses, mentally or physically or emotionally, that they have, then you're believing that it's real and you take it on. We do not have to do that. We do not have to do that. And when we do that, then we put ourselves as sick. And it says here, another sickness thus becomes his own. And in summary, step back now, teacher of God. You have been wrong. Lead not the way, for you have lost it. Turn quickly to your teacher and let yourself be healed. So when people who identify as that, as an empath, or do healing work where they take it on themselves, that means that now you have stopped perceiving correctly. And I think it's really important to share this message, because a lot of people do get confused thinking that when you're doing healing work, it means you have to take it on yourself. You do not. No, and no. Yeah. And then it says, it is not up to God's teachers to set limits upon him, because it is not up to them to judge his son. So to me, that's about if you see somebody that hasn't been healed, that we don't have to put the limits upon how we perceive whether they have accepted or taken in the healing or not, because that's not up to us. Because if we're perceiving that they're not fully accepting the healing, then we're also that. And so we can just perceive correctly. And right now, as I take responsibility for all of that past story of empaths and shamans and healers, I can now perceive them correctly. I can make this shift right now for myself and for anybody that I have perceived as doing that incorrectly. I can perceive them correctly now as God's son. Now he can say with God, "This is my beloved son, created perfect and forever so." So that is how I choose to see now. I'll choose to see you, me, anyone who comes across my path. Thank you.